All right. Let's settle down. All right. Good evening, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. All right. So, welcome to week two. We will quickly, I'll show you the objectives and everything. Before we start, we have a new TA. We were running low on personnel, especially for 30 plus students. So, Brandon is our third and final TA. He is a previous student of mine two cohorts ago. You had the Dutch Bro project, right? Yes, I mean, if he wants to share, you should look at his final year project. He actually made a website for Dutch Bros across the street. It was really cool. He did it better than they have the website over there right now. Yeah, yeah. Did you sell it to them? Yeah. Oh, okay, okay. So he had a really good, cool project. He's a software engineer in one of the companies over here. Chandler, you can talk to him. So we now have three TAs in the class. Hopefully, everything will start going more smoothly. Okay. All right. Next up. So we completed a first week. How's everybody doing? How was the first week? Okay. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we did lose two people. Um, Again, that's the official news to me. I don't know if there are more people, but we'll find out if people don't start showing up for the class. I'll figure that out. But officially, two people did leave. Again, it depends. Again, I have been very straightforward from day one. It's not an easy course, and I understand the pace is extremely fast. And I'm not going to give anybody false hope saying, what's going on. It's going to get better. It's not going to get better, right? I mean, better in the sense that it's not going to slow down. Okay. I've said from the day one that, this is a 3 hour, I have a 3 hour window. I need to cover main concepts and everything. And the rest is that, you guys need to put in a lot more hours than just doing it. Okay. So hopefully from week one, you guys have been doing activities, just not, so I feel better and be like, yes, everybody did activities and everything. Everybody is caught up. Okay. Again, it is important. After this is what I will say after like project one or maybe like a couple of months in, you will look back at today, the first 2 weeks, and you're going to say, well, HTML and CSS is a lot more easier than what we are currently studying. One of the reasons is what I think it's not that it's easy, it's just because when you come in the first 2 weeks, people put in a lot of effort because everybody's pumped up and excited, and they put a lot of effort in week one. The week two also they're excited. Then I introduce JavaScript, and then everything kind of starts going downhill, downhill, downhill. That's when people are like, well, it's difficult. Please pace yourself. Don't get burned out in the first 2 weeks. We have a lot of stuff to cover. When we start JavaScript on week 13, it's going to go up to week 18. There is everything after that is related to JavaScript. There is no escape for JavaScript. Please understand that. Okay. HTML, CSS will be done in the first 2 weeks. They will keep coming up, but not as significantly as JavaScript. Okay. In web development, if you want to be a full stack developer, everything is related to JavaScript. Okay. People hate JavaScript. I hate JavaScript, but I hate it for a different reason because I come from a different backend programming language. People are, it's difficult, they don't understand, but please understand there is no escape from JavaScript. Every single concept after week three that we are going to study is going to come back and we are going to connect it with JavaScript somehow. Okay? So, recommendation, please make sure to pace yourself. I hope that's not how you guys are feeling, right? Maybe I'll bring this up again on after week three. Um, But again, I understand there's a lot of information being passed on to you guys. I hope you guys, the first week was a good reflection how the course is going to go. It's actually going to speed up even more, right? No, I'm serious. You can ask these TAs. All three of them have been in the have gone through it, right? This is actually a little bit slower pace. I remember somebody commented said, "Did we hit like speed of light or something?" It's going to happen. It is right. Um, Again, but the one thing that I have noticed is you guys are a lot more chattier on Slack. I don't think I have had this cohort that people are talking so much on Slack, which is good. Keep the discussions up. I get direct messages. That's all good. But remember, I will answer when I get to it. I know I still have a bad habit that I'm answering people like right away. There might be some cases where I was not able to get to it, but if you see the discussions, if you post it on the main channel, you will probably get a faster response from other people who are facing the same issues. Okay. All right. So before we move on, let me quickly remind you guys, homework that Ethan introduced last Saturday is due the upcoming Saturday. Okay, let's try not to wait until Saturday. Make sure you go ahead and submit something. I know some people have already submitted an empty repo. That's good. Now they just have to keep pushing code to GitHub, and they don't have to worry about hitting the deadline or not. Okay, but that is the deadline. Make sure. What do you have to submit? You have to submit your GitHub link. Okay, the project that you have created on GitHub, you will copy that link and put it in your bootcamp spot. Okay, does everybody know where to submit the homework in BCS? Okay, just like you did in your pre-work. That's the same location. You go into the sessions. Oh, you go into the homework. It's kind of highlighted in a different color, and then you will go ahead and submit that. Okay. You will see the requirement in homework says GitHub pages. We have not covered that. We are going to cover it today, but we have made that optional. You don't have to submit anything related to GitHub pages. I'm going to talk about that today. If you want for practice, you can, but that's not required. You're not going to get penalized for not submitting a GitHub page, so don't worry about that. The only thing you are required is the GitHub link for your project, okay, so that TS can go through the code and see what you have done, okay? If you don't submit anything, you get an I, which is not acceptable at all for graduation, okay? Is everybody clear? Does everybody know where to find the homework? I know you guys know, but I will quickly go through it. Okay, this is GitLab, and this is the folder that I am going to upload all the class material. Okay, usually the schedule is you will see last week we had just one folder. This is week one. Today we have, well, a couple of days ago, I uploaded another folder 02 CSS and Bootstrap. This means everything that we are going to cover on the second week, which is this week, is inside this folder. Okay, I'm going to go and open the folder and show you what all there is, just to quickly give you a recap, but that's how it's going to be. Usually we end the week on Saturdays. Um, by Sunday or at most by Monday, usually it's Sunday, I am going to be uploading the new week's lesson plans over here. Okay, so do a pull on Sunday night, or maybe go to the GitLab site and see if there's something new. If you have, make sure you do a pull. And I recommend getting all this material before we come to the class. The reason is all my PowerPoint presentations are in this folder, right? If you come to the class and do a pull, it's going to take a while, right? The internet over here is not as good. So I recommend do a pull before you come to the class. Okay, this way you have everything on your computer. You don't have to worry about the things that I'm showing. So everything from week one, all the presentations, everything is inside this folder. Okay, for example, if you open up this folder, you will see it's nicely labeled activities, homework, presentation, and some extra information. Okay, activities folder will have all the activities that we are going to cover that week. Okay, so if you open up this activities, let's open up something, see this one. Okay, so most of the activities are going to have a folder called unsolved. Okay, right now in our current week, you will not see this folder. Okay, Once we cover that activity in the class or we have gone through it, later in the night, I'm going to go ahead and push the solution. Okay. So for example, let's suppose we have to cover activities 1 to 6 today. I'm not sure what the exact number is, but once we have completed today's class, I'm going to go inside the CSS folder. Okay. Second week folder activities. I'm going to post a solution for each one of them. Okay. So you will get a solved folder. Recommendation, please try to do the unsolved first. If you get stuck, then you can go and look at the solution, see if you can understand. If not, then you can ask on Slack, ask me, TAs, in office hours, or even on Slack. Okay, but that's how this is going to go. The next thing is homework. This is the unsolved portion, right? I hope everybody understands. Now, this is the folder which you have to refactor or whatever homework you have to do. Okay. Once on Saturday, when you guys have submitted, when the date has gone, usually on Sunday, I'm going to upload the solution for the homework as well. Okay. Make sure you do a pull, keep a copy of the homework. It's going to help you later on. Maybe you want to go back and revise or refactor your code, or you are interested to see what the solution is. You will have the solution after the homework due date is complete. Okay. So usually homework solutions the day after the homework is due. Activities later in the night whenever we cover those activities. All my PowerPoint presentations. Let me go to week 2. Same format. All of these are going to follow the same format. Okay. All my presentations that I'm going to be delivering this week are already uploaded over here. Okay. So anything that you see on the PowerPoint right now that I'm showing, you can be assured that this is all there. Okay, so you can go back and download and look at those slides. So homework for the upcoming week. Again, the TAs are going to talk about the homework Saturday, but I usually upload the homework that is coming also. Some people are curious, or some are done with the homework in the middle of the week and they want to see what the upcoming homework is. So I usually upload the homework and everything. Again, you don't have to look into it right now. It's there for this week. On Saturday, the TAs are going to introduce this homework. Okay, is that clear? Does everybody understand how the folder structure for GitLab is? Okay.
Now, are we uploading the assignments or that's just something that's
Good question. So assignments are, I'm going by honor system that you are doing the assignment. You don't have to submit anything. I'm not going to come to you and ask you, please show me the activities that you're doing. The thing that you have to submit is the homework.
oh,
The activities, highly recommended, but you don't have to upload it. You don't have to submit anything. Okay. The only thing you have to submit would be the homeworks and projects when we get to it. Okay. Any other questions before we move on from GitLab? Okay. Recommendation. Well, not recommend. Everybody should have cloned. I know a couple of people are having issues and we can figure that out, but most of the class, almost everybody should have cloned this repo. If you do a git pull, you should get everything on your local machine. Okay. It's recommended even after, this is once you do a pull, it's there on your local computer unless you delete it. Okay. The program is going to end, the material is for you. The GitLab repo is going to go away eventually. But if you have cloned it, you have everything on your local computer, keep it with you, it's yours. Okay. The repo will eventually after 6 months is going to get deleted. Okay. So that's why I say make a copy, keep it with yourself. Right now you guys are okay. Well, I'll bring it up towards the end of the course as well again. Yes, Tom.
So you mentioned like get polls and places are faster at home. So I was noticing over the weekend, was the home still super slow? Is that frozen?
I was saying just because the Wi-Fi connection over here, and the only reason is because I have these PowerPoint presentations, and these are the only ones that take time to download. That's the only thing. You will see after like week 4 or something, I'm going to stop doing any more PPTs or PowerPoint presentations. That's the only reason I'm saying. Because there are PowerPoint presentations that are a little bit bigger size. Otherwise, it shouldn't be crazy because all of this is just HTML and CSS files and a couple of README text files. Yeah, I'm just saying it because of the presentation. Okay. Anything else? Everybody understand GitLab? Can we move on from GitLab? Okay. Please make sure you clone the repo. You have everything. Everybody understand the schedule. Usually upload after the class, and then homework solutions will be there. You'll have solutions for everything. Okay, make a copy, keep it with you. Good reference. Okay, all right. On top of that, all the sessions are recorded. Does everybody know where to go? Usually, it's you would have seen the resolution of the video. Almost it comes to like 7-8 GB, so it takes a while for me to upload everything. But when I go home, even tonight, I'm going to upload it. By tomorrow morning, you should have the video as well. Okay, everybody knows where it's in BCS. You go into sessions, all the videos are there by session. Okay. All right, recommended. Yes, please go back and watch the videos if you're confused about any concept. Everything is being recorded. Okay. With that, with everything going on, if you are not feeling well, please don't come to the class. Okay. Everything is recorded. Everything is there. Don't worry about remote. You can take the session remote. I'm streaming this also. Okay. If you're sick, please don't come to the class. I'm sure Brent will be happy to accommodate if you go over in that case. That's a special case. Okay. And I'm saying this because even at our work, my boss has told if you are not well, please do not come to work. Just stay at home. That's how you. And you must have read the news that a lot of companies are saying, especially the tech companies, you just need a laptop. So they're saying just stay at home, don't come over here. Okay, the same thing goes over here. Okay, I'm sure Brent will be fine with accommodating. All right. So all of these are being streamed. Anytime you take remote session, you will see I post the link and everything. Okay. Any questions? Any questions before we move on to the lecture part? Does everybody understand? Any confusion around GitLab, GitHub? Yes. Yes.
GitHub, I'm trying to push to my public repository, the
Yes.
file,
Okay.
and I'm getting like the session timeout, fatal, broken pipe.
Hmm.
I'm able to push small files, but when I push the whole homework file, that's
Oh. Okay. We can take a look at it. Um.
that's not.
What is there? Why is there a huge file in
It's
your?
just the homework file with the images and everything.
Oh. Okay.
That's kind of loud laughing because mine was doing the same thing. It just took forever. It didn't have to fatal error, but it was like 100 megabytes. And it took forever. Like it would start, it would load, it get to like 61%. And
Yeah.
it just timed out.
Really? Yeah. We can take a look at it, but that's just the connection. I mean, usually, I've uploaded the PowerPoint presentation. I uploaded like every before the class, and it's okay. I've never had a timeout issue, but we can take a look at it. Yeah. Um. Yeah, there are some files that are huge, but you guys are not there yet, so you shouldn't have anything like a large size file. Okay. We can take a look at it at the break or after the class and see if there's anything in the folder. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Let me close this out.
I still take that backpack and get a PC. It's still time.
What is it? Oh, yeah. Oh, you have a Mac and he's saying get a PC? Yeah. Oh, no. All right. Don't take his suggestion. All right. So, quick recap. We did a lot of stuff on week one. We started with some definitions. We looked at what full stack means. Okay. Then we looked at terminal and git bash. Then we looked at some HTML syntax, Git concepts, CSS, some of the CSS properties on Saturday. Okay. Let me go through the slides quickly. So we looked at the full stack development. This is the course that you guys are taking. We talked about the full stack course. Of course, we haven't studied any of these technologies yet, but we are kind of building towards that. Okay, HTML, CSS is the first step, then comes JavaScript, and then we will kind of navigate into these technologies. Okay, so MongoDB, Express, React, and Node.js. Okay. We talked about the console, terminal for Mac users, and then Git bash for Windows users. Okay, I hope you guys see why we had to go through it because of Git, right? Git runs on Git bash and then on terminal Macs. So that's why we need to understand what are those terminal commands, what are the Git commands, and everything. Okay. Then we started with some basic HTML. Okay, that's the first language of the web development. Again, please remember there are only three things that your browser understands: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. All right. So we have kind of looked at HTML and CSS, and we'll be looking at CSS this week as well. Next week we will start on JavaScript. Okay. We looked at Git. All right, push, pull, cloning, any questions on any of the concepts. Now the commands, it takes a while. It takes as you are doing, as you are pulling, pushing repositories, you will get to learn those commands. Okay, but what I'm more concerned is, are there any questions around the concept? Okay, that's more important. Do you understand the difference between cloning, pull, push, okay, commits, add, why do you need all of those things? Those are more important. The concept is important. The things, the exact commands, you will kind of get to know those more, right? I know Ethan posted a whole kind of like a cheat sheet on your resources channel, I think. So keep that handy, and those are the commands that we'll be using um, in this course a lot. Okay. Um, I know Hoover was having issues with Git. You guys see the benefit that he wanted to kind of go back and get the history back, or the commit that you were trying to put it back. That's the kind of benefit that if something goes bad, you can always go back. Again, the condition is you are committing and you are pushing your changes to GitHub often, and that's why it was recommended when you're doing homework. When you get to a point where you think, okay, this part is good, please make sure you go ahead and do a commit and push so that that part is somewhere. Okay, and then if you want to go back, you can always go back. What do you have any comments? Anything new learning from that?
That I need more reading and more understanding
Okay.
of those types of situations. 'Cause
Right.
I think it's just going to get more complex, especially if you start getting into groups. And,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The real test comes in in groups when right now you are just working in one person group, but when you're working with four other people, that's when the real benefit and also the pain comes in. I know Brandon is laughing over there. Project when people spend, I don't know what, 80% of the time in Git issues and then 20% working on the project. You know, hopefully that's not the case, but that happens every time. Okay, that's when people get frustrated with Git. They're like, well, it's not working. It's just working. We just need to learn how to use it correctly. Okay, but we'll be there. I'll help you through. TAs are there. We'll make sure that again, recommendation is if you're having Git issues in your projects, it's better early on, quickly ask. People spend a lot of time trying to solve the issue, and then, that's a lot of waste of time. Okay? So,
Just get into practice now. There's no penalty for having too many commits. Just
Mhm.
commit.
Yeah.
Anytime you make changes, commit.
yeah. Okay, then we looked at CSS. We looked at three types of how do you include CSS in your code: inline, internal, external. Then we looked at the syntax for CSS. We looked at three type of selectors: class, ID, and element selector. Okay, um, class and I would say element selectors are more widely used. IDs are used as well, but they are kind of like a one-off case. So that's why you will see classes being used a lot, and then you will see element selectors being used, and then IDs are used. I won't say rarely, but not as often. Okay, and I hope you guys see the why IDs would be used less, because just one-off case that an ID only is going to apply CSS to a particular condition, and that's all. Okay, you cannot basically reuse that because ID technically has to be unique, and only a single element can have that ID, and nobody else can have it. Okay. We looked at some of the CSS concepts. We started with float, float left, float right. I hope, well, you guys said you guys worked on the activities. Hopefully it helps how these are working. I want you guys to know that this is not the only thing. We'll look at Bootstrap and we'll see how they do it as well. Um, but later on, I would recommend looking into something called Flexbox. once you're kind of comfortable with this, there is something called um, Flexbox in CSS. This is part of CSS 3, the version that we are on. And they have included these kind of things. We'll talk about Bootstrap. Bootstrap kind of introduced a lot of these concepts, and now CSS, like vanilla CSS, they have also taken those concepts and kind of added to their new versions. Okay, so once you're comfortable with it, I would recommend look into Flexbox a little bit. Maybe wait until Bootstrap and then go back and see Flexbox also. Okay. Then we looked at some of the box model. All right, margin, border, padding, and content differences. Padding within the border, margin. You're trying to increase or decrease the distance between elements or the neighbors in your HTML. Okay. And then let's see, we looked at CSS positioning. Remember the static, relative, absolute, and fixed. We looked at those four CSS properties. There are a couple of more. Again, once you're comfortable with this, I would recommend looking into, there's a z-index one. That's the one that is after this one. At least look at the z-index one. Okay, it helps you with overlapping uh, CSS or boxes if you have something on your web page. Okay. All right. Again, this is all on your PowerPoint, so you don't have to copy it. But these are some of the sites that are recommended. I have used. If you are, if you were googling, you were trying to find some solution, you chances are you almost ran into these websites. All right. W3 schools. Please make sure any question, any concept you're trying to look into, first go to W3 schools and try to read the documentation. Okay. You will hear me saying this. Here's what's going to happen, right? I'm going to keep telling you guys, and some people, even my previous cohort, they get frustrated and they say, you know what, I'm paying for this class. I don't want to Google anything. Just tell me how to solve this. Okay, that is not the purpose. Again, that's actually easy for the TAs and me, but that's not how I run the class, right? I'm not I'm not here just to increase your aptitude. I'm here to increase the attitude as well, right? I know how this industry works. I've been there. Part of my job, like major part of my job today, I'm a senior engineer. So they don't expect me to code as much now, right? I love to code, and I tell, they're like, well, you have already proven that you know how to code, right? Your part is now to train the junior developers or mentor somebody and make sure they come up to the level that you are on. That's like the 60% of the job. As you go, well, junior developers are expected to code more, but as you go up the ladder, the expectation changes. I don't like it, but then what happens is I won't get paid as much. I get paid to mentor somebody else, and that's how it is, right? But then I do my pet project just to make sure I'm coding as well. But that's how the expectation is. Okay, as you go, as you have proven yourself in the industry, the next step is that you help other engineers come up and basically take up whatever you have done and teach them the ways, right? And this is how I like to run the class as well. I know you guys are going to be frustrated. You're going to be, well, if I had to read the documentation, I wouldn't come in the class, right? That's not how it works. Okay. You will see when you are at a job, when you're in a programming job, you will get assigned a mentor for like maybe 1 month or 2 months, at most 3 months, right? After that, it's not that you are on your own, but the expectation would be you are stuck somewhere, but you have done all the research and everything, and your mentor or your senior is going to ask, hey, what did you do to come to this point? Like, why are you stuck over here? Okay. If you say, well, I don't know, just tell me how to fix it, that's not going to fly. All right. You will have evaluations, you will have things, and who is evaluating your conduct and everything? It's the senior or your mentors. Okay. So again, they are looking for engineers who are curious, who are actually can go and research and try to find something and then come up versus saying, I don't know how this is going to work, just tell me how to fix it. Okay. Again, look into these resources. At least from these, I can say Stack Overflow, W3 School, CSS Tricks also is also a really good one. Um, Developer Mozilla, that's the official documentation for JavaScript. Hold on this one. This might confuse you a little bit because it's like official and they have some terms that kind of hard to understand or are scary. When we get to JavaScript and more in depth, I would recommend going to this site as well. But this is where you will find the official documentation for JavaScript. We'll talk about JavaScript when we get there. Okay, otherwise, CSS tricks, CSS newbie, W3 schools, and these, the first one should be good starting point. Okay? All right. Any questions from last week? Any general, like more like concept wise? Anything you're confused about? Maybe something to come before we move on to a couple of new things today. Yes, Scott.
When you were doing one of the activities for coding, it was the one with all the different background colors.
Yes.
So I tried to do that one as pushing as far as I could. But I couldn't quite get it to look like the demo.
Okay.
But when you sent out the
Solution.
the solution,
Yeah.
I noticed that you had like an asterisk and like your background border
Ah.
or something like that.
Okay.
Is that like standard for every CSS document? Do you think?
No, it's not. It's not standard. Do you know what it means? Say that again.
Universal.
It's universal. Again, so you will find. Again, that's to be honest, that's not my solution. That's the solution that that the trilogy uploads. I would do it in a different way, but there will be some pieces that I have intentionally left out so that you guys can see. And so the star basically means that apply the CSS to the whole document. If you see that star body thing, you know, you should be seeing something like this in your CSS. Okay, this basically means that apply whatever CSS that you have over here, it is going to be applied to everything within that body tag of your HTML. Okay, anything that comes over here, that is what it's going to be applied. So the whole kind of like the body tag will get that CSS. Okay, but I'm sure you can do it without the star this as well. Whatever the conditions are over here, this is basically adding the border or something. But that's what this is doing.
Is
Yes.
the content box in that suite of code? I think we were said it was a content. Basically, it was the when you're adding the padding, the margin, and the border,
Uh huh.
that can increase your box size. And
Yes.
this is using this particular. Basically, it means that instead of increasing the size of everything, it takes
Yes.
the border and the padding into consideration.
Yes.
Part of the equation.
Yes. Yes.
Remember that?
What-
And is that a standard? Do you see that more often than not when people are using that instead of I guess, adding everything together?
What was the last part of your question?
I get mixed up too. I need to look at the.
Okay. So what Hoover is saying, if you looked at the PowerPoint presentations or some of the previous activities, um, again, that's the suggestion. I mean, you won't have to calculate it. What he is saying is this is our content, right? And then you have a border, and then within the border, this is your padding, right? And then you have margin. So when somebody says what is the width of this HTML element, there are two schools. First, they say you have to include the margin, the padding, and whatever the width of this HTML is. You add these up, and that would be the total width of that HTML component, right? And how would you say that? You would say the width of this component with margin is this thing. The other way to say the same thing would be the width of this content is this thing without margin. So you use the word with margin and without margin because again it's two different things. Some people like to include margin, and some people think that margin is outside. Why? Because margin is the distance between two elements, right? So some people are like, well, it's not really part of the HTML element. So that's why when they say what is the width of this element, you would say the width of this element is X, Y, and Z with margins or without margins. That's all. And the same with the height. When you say what is the height of this content, you would include the height, the actual height, then whatever the top padding is, and then whatever the top
margin is. You said that's the height of it.
Do you remember the name of those two properties, or the property and the two values?
What was that?
What's the name of that property?
Padding margin.
No, it's a CSS property where you're either setting, yes, I'm gonna include the margin as part of my calculation, or I'm not. You know what? Yeah, it's border value,
Are you talking about border box?
yeah.
What did anybody look up border box? What was the border box? Anyone? Yes, sure.
That it won't maybe add padding, won't extend further, but just make it it won't extend further.
Okay. It's
Just the content, it'll shrink the content,
okay.
not fill anything in.
So let's see border. Well, somebody else also had a
Is it box sizing? Box sizing?
yes. What is box sizing? Yes. Yes. Oh, you are looking at right now. Okay. I thought you were like okay. Okay, go ahead and tell. What do you think? Just reading it. That's a good thing as well.
Yeah, basically the box sizing property allows the square footage of adding a border, for the width and height.
Okay. What are you talking about? Over box sizing? Is this the right
So
property?
you're in the right spot, yeah.
This is the one that you're talking, right?
I believe so, yes. Yeah. Yes, it is, absolutely.
Okay. So first of all, the how do you calculate the height and the width? This is what I was saying, with margin or without margin. Okay, is that clear?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So for example, they have two divs over here. This is the width. These are the two examples. That's what we looked at on Saturday, right? We are adding width and height, and then we were adding borders and padding depending on our case. Okay. Um, let's go back over here so that you guys can see. So what is the issue over here? The issue, if you see, the width of the top box is also 300, and the bottom one is also 300, right? Do you see? First of all, the thing about width is 300 px, and this is also 300 px. But visually, that's not the case. You see that the top one looks smaller, and the bottom one looks a little bit larger, right? Even though the width is the same, and that's the problem is this thing. So by default, CSS is not including this extra padding in your width calculation.
Do you see that more often than people including it?
What is it? Well, okay. So to be honest, what happens is it depends. There's no like a use case, but yes, more often what I see is kind of this structure, right? Um, but again, even more often what I see is people using a lot of CSS frameworks such as Bootstrap or something. So the good part about those frameworks is that they kind of take care of it. Some of these properties that you see, border sizing for this one, for this property. So this property is going to help you make sure that if you say 300, it actually gives you the correct measurement. Some of these properties are actually coming from frameworks that have introduced these concepts. So the later version of CSS are like, okay, we need to add this as well. For example, I was talking about the Flexbox and everything. We'll talk about Bootstrap. Some of these concepts are coming from Bootstrap. Bootstrap and other CSS framework knew this is the issue and they solved it. And the later version of CSS are like, well, okay, we need to fix that as well. So they kind of started adding some of these properties. And the same goes with JavaScript also. We'll talk about JavaScript. You will see that a lot of the things, a lot of the solutions or fixes are actually coming from some other framework that have resolved those issues in JavaScript. The new versions are like, okay, you know what? We will borrow that solution and include it by default. So there was of course a demand, and the demand was because you see the sizes are not correct, so they kind of included these properties now. Okay. Box sizing what? Yes. Yes. Yes.
What is that saying?
So these are options. These are different options. Remember your CSS positioning, right? We had absolute, relative, and all those stuff. So box sizing also has different options. Okay, what are the possible options over here? Let's see. Um, so you have four options. The first two are more important. Okay, so the border box is basically saying that you are going to include the content, padding, and the border size. That's what border box means. Okay, content box is actually not including the border and padding. Okay, that's the difference between border box and content box. So it is the difference is what of these things are going to be included in the calculation and what of them are not going to be included. That's the difference between border box and content box. So border box is including content, padding, and border, and content box is not including border and padding. So you have two options. Okay. Again, good question. Recommended. Please go into W3 schools. Take a look at this. It's pretty cool that you can actually try a few things over here as well. You can render the HTML without actually writing a lot of code. Okay. Let's go back here. All right. Any other questions? Okay. So if you don't have questions, you guys must have already noticed this. In our HTML, there were sections. Remember, we talked about header, section, aside, main. Remember those HTML properties? I want to clarify and I want to go a little bit deeper on those from the concept wise. Now, properties, the HTML elements that we're talking about, for example, I said, let me write this down, section. Um, So we talked about, we looked at section HTML tag, we looked at header, we saw footer, there was a aside tag, there was a main tag, right? Some of these that we have looked at. Okay, so these are all part of the new HTML, HTML version 5. They did not exist before HTML5. So all of these tags, these are part of HTML5. Okay. What existed before? All of these were represented by just one tag in HTML version 4, right? All of these were represented by just one tag called div. Okay. So if you see these HTML elements such as section, header, and footer, you can guess that this is the code is written in HTML5. They did not exist before HTML5. Before HTML5, there was only one tag called div, and everybody used div to represent a section or a header or a footer, main, and a site. Okay. Now, why were they introduced and what do they mean? These are called semantic tags. These are called semantic tags. So when it comes to functionality, they are exactly the same as a div tag. Okay, there is no difference when it comes to the coding part, when it comes to visualization, when it comes to anything. From technically behind the scene, there is no difference between a section tag and a div tag. There is no difference between a header tag and a div tag. There is no difference between a footer tag and a div tag, right? HTML5 introduced these as semantic. They mean something to us humans, but they don't actually mean anything to computers. For computers, when the page is running, a div tag is same as section tag. It's the same code. There's no difference. But they are called semantic because for us, for humans, header tag means that the code between the header tags represents some kind of a header. Okay? The code between the footer tag It's going to represent some code that I'm going to put on my footer. Okay. Can I change this? Can I flip it? Can I put the code that I'm going to put in my footer tag in my header section? Yeah. Should you do it? No. But can you do it? Yeah. HTML is not going to complain. It's still going to render. Right? Somebody looking at your code will be like, what the heck is going on? Why is it? But from the code wise, there is no difference. Right? Yes, Tom.
Maybe semantic tags help with like SEO and all.
Yes. Stole my thunder again. I was coming to that point. Yes. I was going to say, then why do we need it? Since Tom already spoiled it. So then why do we need it? So these are required for SEOs, which are search engine optimizations. Okay, these are your web crawlers that for Google when they are making up their search and they're trying to find your website and all. So these semantic tags help with those. For example, they're trying to find main points or like kind of description, like a main description or a quick summary. And the expectation is in your header tag, you will have that, right? Something like a name of the company or something. So your SEOs and web crawlers, they only go and look for this tag and then pull whatever the description you have over here and they kind of index it and everything. It's easier for them to find and it's quicker for them. That's all. Okay. Instead of you can write the whole page just using divs. Then they have to add some extra code as a little look at all your div tags and try to figure out what is the purpose of your website, what is the business you are trying to run, and then show the results in that way. Yes.
Something like that, you can put like most to do that.
Yeah, there are a few more things in SEO. How do you make it more efficient, or how do you do that? But they were introduced because of one of the reasons was everything was a div tag. There was no idea, so it was more difficult. But these semantic tags were included just so that programmers like who are not into SEOs, who are not not sure what to do with it, these will help with those things. So that's why these were introduced. So basically, functionality wise, all of these there's no difference between those. Remember that. Okay, these tags are introduced in HTML5. So for some reason you use section header and footer, right, and somebody opens your website in Internet Explorer an older version that does not support HTML5, what is going to happen? Your website is not going to render. Okay, that's the drawback. Again, if that is not your audience, it depends on what your business is, what you're trying to develop. If you know that your audience or your target audience is not going to be using an older version of IE, there's a very slim chance somebody is going to open up a website that is running on HTML4. You're fine. Okay, most of the cases that's okay, but remember, this is a consideration that a lot of companies take into. So for that reason, the question is, which one should be you using? Should you use the semantic tags or should you stick with the div tags? Okay. Now, before I answer that, remember this is what we were trying to do. So these are the tags that we can use, but you can use the div tags and they will render the same thing. There's no difference. Okay. Now, which one should you be using? Basically, it depends on the company you're working for. That's the simple case. You will need to feel it out and see what your company standard is. Maybe they are for example, maybe it's like an insurance company, right? And they know that people are going to open their website in an older version of Internet Explorer. Then it's not possible for you to use these things because these are not going to render. Bad user experience. It's not going to work. Okay, maybe it's more like a latest business, or they are targeting some software companies, or it's a different like a SaaS product or something. Then you can be fine that okay, people who will be looking at my website are definitely going to be on the later versions of Chrome. They're going to be on HTML5, so I'm okay. So then, you know, try to use these ones. Okay. So in this class, I would highly recommend use the semantic tags every time you're using. Get into the habit of it. It's easier to understand, and it showcases what you're trying to do. All right. A header tag tells me, okay, you're trying to create a header of your website. A footer tag tells me that's what you're trying to do. It conveys the meaning of your website, of your code, nicely and easily. Okay. When you're working, then you will just have to see what your company is working with. Okay. Any questions on these two things? Does everybody understand the difference between a semantic tag and a div tag? Right. Both of them are there. That's why you will see a lot of websites with div tags. They don't use semantic tags, right? Again, they are trying to make sure that their website runs on every single browser, so that's why they're kind of on div tags. Unless the version goes away and there's like nobody using that version of IE. Yes, Tom.
So the doc type at the very top of the HTML still makes sense because it uses the tags that matter.
No, it's still it's kind of like a backward compatible. So HTML5 has this plus this. That's how it is. Yeah. So the div tag, the doc type on the top is that contains both this and this. At times you will be using div a lot. Again, why? Within your header you have more sections. There's nothing really within the header, so you would just simply use a div tag and back your website. So that's why. Yeah. Div is not going to, if div goes away, I think every site is going to crash or something. I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. Div, this is probably the most widely used HTML tag ever. Okay. All right, so then we looked at classes and IDs in CSS. Okay, class names, reusability. I hope you guys are working on your homework and activity. You see the benefits of a class and an ID. Of course, IDs are used a lot less versus classes. Okay, just like div tags, classes are used a lot. All right, you guys will see CSS classes a lot. Okay. Um, all right, before we move on to this one, any questions? Everybody understand the differences? Okay. So in this part, what I want to show you guys is how do you kind of debug your websites. I know you guys are looking at margins and paddings and everything. How do you visualize what are the debugging tools that are available to you? Okay, so we will look at um, the most widely used debugging tool, which actually comes built in with Chrome. You don't have to install anything extra. Okay, let me show you how to use that and then what all you can do with it. Let me just open simple google.com. Okay, so if you right click and go into inspect, you will see this window showing up. Okay, this is the Chrome debug tool that we will be using a lot. Okay. At times you will say that you will hear me asking, "Hey, did you look at the console? Are there any errors? Did you inspect the tool? Did you inspect your website?" This is what I'm talking about. Okay. You will see console. This will come into play when we go into JavaScript. For now, we don't have to worry about the console, but later on we'll be looking at this part. Right now, the only tab that you should be concerned is elements. Okay. If you open your homework, if you open any of the activities, you will see all the HTML that has been written in your code and some more. Okay. Now, for example, I'm trying to find out this image. Like, what is the source of this image? So I can go over here, right click, inspect. It is going to take me to the exactly the line of code that corresponds to this image over here. You can see it's a ing tag. Google is using a ing tag over here, and this is they're using this image. Remember the relative paths. You see, Google is using a relative path. It's not like a C something something. It's not going to work. So they are using a relative path, and it kind of brings this icon over here. Okay. The good thing about this tool is you can change stuff over here. Okay. What you will be doing is you will be going back to your code and modifying some of the pixels and coming over here and seeing if this works. This is a good tool that you can um, change some of the values and find out the correct one before you go and to make a code change. Okay, we'll take a look at it, what I mean by that. For example, let's suppose I want to change the image. Okay, so I am going to let me find an image that we can change. Mm, so I remember there's a source property we have looked at, and then there's a source that looks like they both are being used. So let's suppose if I want to change this image, where's my you see what is it? Did I like hack into Google website and change their thing? Okay. So these anything that you change on any website is always local to you, right? Haven't hacked anything, everything is good. Don't worry, Google is still there. If you refresh this page, it will go back to the original one. Okay, for example, if you just refresh it, goes back to the same one. So this tool, what it does, it helps you change stuff at runtime on the fly, but does not save those changes or it does not directly upload to anything. It's the changes are local to you. Because let's suppose I was trying to play with a different icon or a different image, and this is what you're looking for, right? Before you make a code change, you just want to see if I put this image, is it going to look good? Is it fine? This is what you do. You go ahead and find the exact one and change some stuff over here. Okay. Let's suppose you want to change the CSS for color for this one. Let's say let's look at this button over here. Click this button. On your this side, you will see the CSS that is being applied to this button. Everything is over here. Okay, some of these things you will recognize, some of these are other CSS properties, but everything is being rendered over here. Okay, can you change this also? You can, let's say, let's make this border 5px. Let's change this to pink. See, now I have pink buttons. You can also change, well, you can change anything that is related to CS. So let's suppose you change solid to dotted, and your buttons are now dotted. Okay, for some reason you are trying to see if this is going to look better. So you're trying to, instead of making a change in your code and coming back over here and trying to do it, this is a quick and easy thing, and you can kind of figure out if the margin is correct, if it looks good, what is going on over here. What it does is it's going to load all the HTML on the left over here, and it is going to load all the CSS on your right side. Okay? Right click, inspect. Now, this is extremely important when you're doing your homework, when you're doing your Bootstrap homework, when you're doing your activities, right? And your margins or patterns are not being aligned. This is the tool. Even I'm going to come and refer. I'm going to say, okay, show me what's going on. So if you hover over it, you will see that it shows you this search box has a padding of this thing, and the content is actually highlighted in blue, and the padding is whatever this green color is. Okay, they have done a really good job. They will kind of highlight you every single thing. For example, there's a big, looks like there's a big div tag which surround these two buttons. Okay, and then when you hover over it, you will see the button content is this thing. This content has a border, it has a padding, looks like it has a margin between these two, and they tell you exactly what the number is. Okay, this will help you when you are doing your stuff, and then you can be like, okay, I want to change the margin. You click on it, and then you will come over here and then change the margin to see if that's what you're looking for. Okay, yes. Right, so it's not necessary that this is inline. Um, this one over here, right? So what you see over here, they might have inline, they might not. I'm not sure. But what happens is sometimes um, this is like kind of extracts whatever the code is and puts it over here. That might be the case. They might have some inline. I'm not sure, but it might be also that they're using some style. It kind of expands over here. I don't know what tool they're using. There are some tools that kind of compress your CSS and put it over there. But when you open up this in the inspector, it kind of expands everything so you can see what is going on. Yes. What is it?
Like the companies want to see that you can do both, or they think it's like, better you can do better for me, like, better for me.
Um, I think it's not preferable that you do inline, and there are a few reasons. The one of the reasons is if you do inline, right, and then you also have a style.css. Inline is the reason you would do an inline is because you're trying to modify something and you don't want to mess up the whole CSS. And you are a little bit lazy to go and find out exactly what needs to be changed. So inline is a quick fix because remember inline is going to take precedence. So what they do is they put a quick fix over here, fixes the thing, and everything is good. Okay. Most of the companies, at least the ones I've worked with, they have strict rules. They have some code checking programs that will not let you do inline, and that will raise a flag, and they will say, "Hey, you need to go back and change." Right. So preference is do not do any of the inline stuff. It's difficult to find out. It's difficult to debug if something goes wrong. That's all.
Okay, what's the stuff on the bottom?
Um,
Hashtags and
Right, these are telling you the IDs and if this div tag has an ID called search form. So it's kind of giving you the hierarchy and the tree what's going on.
okay, and then the two threes with the red X and the yellow.
Right, this is going to come into play when we go into JavaScript. So any errors in your JavaScript are going to be shown over here and you can see those in your console. So that's why I didn't talk about it because this is, you won't see anything with your HTML. This is mainly used when you're doing JavaScript. So we'll come back to console and we'll see if you have any errors in your code, this is where it will show up. But again, this is for JavaScript, so we'll talk about that next week. Okay, for this week and from the last week lecture, element tab and this over here, style. This is what is more important. Okay? Any other questions? All right, so let's take. We'll do a quick exercise until 7:45, and then we'll take a break at 7:45. I want you guys to look up any website. Make sure open up the Chrome tool and modify that website. If it's a fun change, please flag it out. Send a screenshot. Go to any website and see what you can change. For example, I went over here and changed the icon. You can change a lot of stuff. Make sure you understand those, and then we will move on to the next one. So find a website, go to Chrome Tools, modify a few things of that website, send a screenshot if you're extremely proud of that change.
No functional differences, whatever is going to be left. You know, to it, but you already come to it.
All right, let's take a break. 15 minutes. We'll start back at 8 o'clock. All right.
have to create an email. Go ahead and provide it. It's open. Yeah, so if you open up there like that file, if you open up the x86 file, that image is this is the actual website, and that's just it's working. So everything's working. If you open up that code in so there's the code. This is the code that matches up. But the thing is, there's a bunch of stuff on here that doesn't make like it's everybody does well. They have stuff that does classes and IDs that are the exact same. There's no conflicts in there. So that's what this first one is. It's just like getting used to it. Yeah, it's organize it so that if someone else can come here, I was talking about those like different kinds of letters that we have, like so many letters, right? So you can see here we have this, it's called a div. They put a class over here, but this is the head of it here. So you can change this instead of div and this, and then we can make a class header, like it's stuff like that. Just like cleaning it up, making it look easier. This, and you'll need to make it
Yeah. And but no, it's included in the group, remember? Everything else I can spot, it says it's taken, everything. Yeah, it's so spot.
So let's go to the homework. Cool. Step one. Good. All right. Where is the
See, I even just like spot axes, about whatever. It's literally.
Yeah. So turn look here. You added it? Yeah, it says add. Cool. Okay. Now you did it. That's easy. Now the other one is you gotta put the oh cool. Always makes me put it in well, whenever I do it I have to do the message in quotes. Good. Yeah, cool. Work to work. Alright, so and then git push. Boom. Okay, so go back to GitHub in the browser. There you go. it puts, so you need to add this, you um, I mean, they even with the remote and hung up on a stick. Like when you're talking to somebody, they're like, I don't want to talk to you anymore. That one I don't know what that means. I would have to Google that. I mean, was that it? Did that work? It could be, yeah, that could be your internet connection time out. I'm not going to say that for sure, but that is a possibility. Ah, excellent. Yeah, good luck with that. It's like, I don't need blazing fast speeds or, super low prices. I just need something that doesn't suck. Is there anybody out there that can offer that? No? Well, SVG is not something I
Yes.
with the inspect. Can you just press F12?
Yes. You have a Windows machine.
Yeah.
Yes. For that, F12 will work. Yeah, I have a different key. I think it's a shift something else. But yes, they both do the same thing. Yeah. All right. Let's get back to the next topic. I saw some of the images on Slack. They look pretty funny. Um, Thank you for not going to my LinkedIn profile and modifying and sending it the screenshot. Yeah. Till now, only one person in my first cohort has done that, and nobody else has done that after that. But thank you for not. What are you trying it?
I tried to go to your email template, you did not take all the green boxes.
Okay, that's a new one. Yeah. So, all right, your chance is gone now since I already told you guys. So, all right. So that was the Chrome Inspector tool. Now, if you are once you are working on your homeworks and feature, please make sure use it heavily, and we'll be using it as well. Okay. Um, the other way to get to it is in your Chrome on your top right. This is for Mac. Well, it should be the same for Windows. If you go into your settings, oops, sorry, more tools, and it's the last option. It's called Developer Tools as well. So that's one option to get to it, or do a right click inspect. The shortcut key on Mac is Option Command I. Option Command I, and it should show up your Chrome Inspector. I think on Windows it is F12. I think oh, it's called Control Shift I. Okay, that's the shortcut key. Again, you can find it if you go on your top right hand corner to settings, and it's under more tools, last option. It will show you the shortcut key as well. Okay, so the next topic is having multiple CSS files. I want to show you what is the effect of having more than one CSS files in your code. Okay, not necessarily a bad thing, but I just want to make sure that you guys are aware if you have more than one CSS files, what you should be aware of when you're writing the code. Okay, so we'll start with a simple example. I'll just create an HTML and a CSS file. I'll call it multiple CSS example. I'll create quickly an HTML file, and then I'm going to create a styles.css. In my index, I'll have a skeleton. Let's give it a title, multiple CSS example, and I am going to add my link. This will be to I'm going to use a relative path and then add my CSS file. Okay, I'm going to format it. All right, and then I am just going to add a heading tag, and then I'll add something. Okay, just a heading. Let's go ahead and run this to make sure this is good before we add some CSS. I will open this with some live server. Now it should show up with some text on the screen. Okay, simple. We'll just add a quick CSS. Just change the background color to, let's say that. Okay, pretty simple HTML and CSS file. Okay, now what is going to happen if I add another CSS file and then have the same property, same selector element, and same HTML, same CSS property? And it's not like a rare case. You will have more than one CSS file, but I just want you guys to know what is the effect of that. So let's suppose I am going to add another file. I'm going to call it styles2.css. Okay. I'm very bad at coming up with names, so styles2.css. That's the only thing I can come up with. Okay. So in this file, I am going to add a same thing. Okay, and I'm going to add background color, and this time I'm going to add background color, and let's add it green. Okay, Let me open this in the window so I can close this. Okay. So in my styles dots, the second one I have the background set as green, and the first one it is set to red. Okay. No changes. Again, why don't I see any changes? Because I have not included the CSS file in over here. Okay.
Why is it H2
Um, where? This is. Thank you for pointing it. It was a mistake. It has to be H1. Okay. All right. Thank you, man. I can skip. Usually people ignore it, and I have to debug and find out. Thank you. Just keep this up. It will help me. It will save us time. Okay. All right. So I have H1 in both, and I have green over here and the red over there. Okay. The reason it doesn't show up, as you guys guess, I haven't added this file. So I'm going to go ahead and add this file. The one is already there. I'm going to add another one, link, and then I'm going to say styles 2. Now, what is happening over here? Why is it green and why is it not red? Okay, and the reason is the order of these styles, order of the CSS file that is being loaded. Okay, in your HTML code, it goes from top to bottom. Okay, the first thing it does, it is going to go ahead and load line number 7, the first file, and then it loads the second file, and if there's an property that is overriding it, it is going to take the property that is overriding it. So whatever property that is in the last file, that takes precedence. Okay, so if I switch this order, what is going to happen? It is going to show up the red one now. I switched the order. So the first is styles 2, which has green, but there is another file that is overriding this property, right? Exact same element, exact same property, it goes ahead and overrides it. So that's why the properties over here are going to take precedence. Okay. Now, the only properties that are being overridden, let me switch this back to this one. Let's suppose I have a font size property. Font size um, 50 px. Okay, even though this is in my first file, it's not being overridden, it's still 50 px. Why? In my second file, there is no CSS property tied to h1 that is changing the font size. Okay, so only the CSS properties that are common, the last file is going to take precedence. Okay, again, if you have multiple CSS files, the properties that are in the last file, they are going to take precedence. Yes.
Why would you have multiple CSS
Yes. Why would you? We'll come to good question. We'll come to that question. The first thing is if you have multiple CSS files. The second one, if there are properties that are common, the last one that is being loaded is the one that is going to take precedence. Okay. Now, why would you have multiple CSS files? Right? It is quite possible. Actually, it is very possible you're going to have more than one files. And the reason is, how do you structure a code? Now let's suppose this is a simple site with just one CSS property. Would you create a website with just one CSS property? No, you're going to have like hundreds of CSS properties. Now, if you put everything in just one CSS file, you'll have 1,000 lines of code, which is difficult to debug. So what do? You break it apart into different smaller size CSS files depending on the use case. Okay, let's suppose you want to create a CSS file just for your button. Let's suppose your company has a specific color. This is how the button should be. All of your code should be using this button. So you will create a CSS file and you will call it buttons.css. Okay. When I'm looking at your code, some other developer is looking at your code. They would navigate over here and they will see button.css. This tells the developer the code in that file is related to button only. Okay, everything else is somewhere else. So it is easier to debug, easier to refactor, easier to break it down. That's the only reason you will have different CSS files. That's one of the reasons. Yes, Nate.
So say you have like 20 of them. Is that
Yes.
having performance yet? On like the website, if it loads, if it loads, if you have like 20 CSS files?
So even if you take the code and put it into one CSS file, there will be some, depending on how much code you have. Again, you are breaking the same file into multiple sizes if you're talking about kilobytes and everything. So even if you put that text into one file, I think it will still have the same big size or break it out into chunks. Yeah. Yes. 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 The only drawback could be, let's suppose the internet connection is like so slow that one of your CSS doesn't come through. That's the only thing. Yeah. Yes.
It would be a good practice, I think, if you're building a website on the site, to have a CSS for each HTML block.
Each HTML block, yes. Again, there are different tools. Eventually, what you will see is when we are using frameworks such as React, the code that they give you, they have already divided everything for you. So you are actually going to be coding as separate components and separate CSS files. Yes. So they have already set the path for you, and that's the way to go. Yes, you will have separate pages, separate CSS, separate pages, separate CSS. Each page, even each component is going to have a separate CSS. Yes. Okay.
So is this something like scope? Maybe put something like scope or
Now, scope is more related to JavaScript. Over here, it's not. We don't call it scope. There's no scope over here. It's just the way your files load. The first one is going to load first, and then the second one comes along. And if there's anything that is present over here that is getting overwritten, it just overwrites it. Basically, the better word would be it is going to override those CSS properties. The word scope is mostly used with JavaScript. Okay, we're going to learn to hate that word pretty soon after second week. JavaScript has many scoping issues. We'll talk about that. But there's it's not scope. It's just the way the order your CSS is loading. Understand? The one that loads the last, it is going to override any of the properties that exist in the previous ones. Okay. Right. So the other use case would be having multiple files. When we get to Bootstrap, Bootstrap is also a CSS framework. Okay, how do you make Bootstrap work? You are going to include a file from Bootstrap over here. Okay, if you want to override, you don't like something in Bootstrap. You're like, well, I don't like the color of this button. What do? You create your own CSS file and override that color in this file. What is going to happen? Bootstrap is going to get loaded first, and then your file is going to override those changes and render that button. Okay, when we get to Bootstrap, you will see we won't be creating any custom styles, but a lot of companies do that. If they want to modify the Bootstrap colors, of course they have blue, green, like a generic ones, right? But every company, you will see that they have a color combination, a particular color that they call theme, right? They want that theme to be shown on their screen. What do? They are going to override those styles in the second file so that everything gets overwritten over here. That would be the other use case. Okay. Any questions? See some confused looks. Okay. So again, the important thing to remember is the order your CSS is going to load. Okay, this last one is always going to override the previous one. So if I had a third CSS over here, that is going to override everything from this and this. Okay, again, the properties that are common. All right, anything that is not common over here, it is going to not override. For example, the font size was on the first one, but there is no font size that is being overridden over here, so nothing changes. And this could, if I even added the font size over here, then yes, it is going to override this and change the font size to the next one. Okay, so common properties get overridden. If they're not common, if they're not present, it is not going to get overridden. Okay. All right. Any questions? Okay. I'm going to open this one, and let's do this. I am going to remove these. Okay. Comes over here. Let me expand this so you can see this one. Okay, so here's the question. Denzel, what is the difference between HTML CSS?
HTML is just kind of like architects and CSS is just kind of like the colors and these kind of
Okay, you guys heard that? So HTML is simply putting text on your web page. Okay, it just puts a text on your web page. CSS is the one that actually adds styles to your web page. Let's suppose I have an H2. Let's add. Okay, so um, Denzel, if I wanted to change the font size, would I do that in HTML or CSS?
CSS.
CSS, right? If I want to change the font size of any of these elements, I have to do a CSS file. Okay, I have to have a CSS and write the property. Now, if HTML is just putting text on the screen, why do I see different font sizes for H1 and H2? Because what?
Because by definition, HTML has some defined as different sizes.
But HTML is just text. It doesn't have to. It does not have anything to do with CSS. Remember, the sizes are defined by CSS.
The heading sizes,
Yeah, headings. These are tags, and they're supposed to output text. HTML by definition is just text on the screen. Okay, if I want to change the font size, it has to be done in CSS. Then why do I see H1 having a font size of, I don't know, 20, and H2 having a size of, I don't know, 12?
is there a heading background?
Oh, and that is good to answer. Yes, that is the answer. Every browser has a default CSS that it loads. Understand the difference between HTML. HTML is just text. The only way to add any styling, any font size, hidden CSS. And how do we find out? If you inspect this, you will see the CSS over here. Did I write this CSS? No. Your H1 tags are getting this CSS. Where is this coming from? This is coming from Google Chrome. Every browser and this style sheet over here, you will see user agent style sheet. That's the name of the style sheet. Okay, every browser, Internet Explorer, Chrome, Safari, any other browser you go to, they have a default CSS that they load. Okay, and they have defined these sizes. By their definition, each one should have a font size of bold, and their font size should be 2 EM. EM is a different unit of measure, just like pixel. Okay, the important part is that the only way to add some font size is through CSS. And every browser is adding a default CSS, or we say it's kind of like a, I don't know what is a hidden CSS, but it's a default CSS. Okay, and if you um, Google this, I think I marked it. Please don't make fun of my organization. That's how I organize my bookmarks. Okay, so every browser, for example, the Chrome has a style sheet called Chromium US style sheet. They have the code over there. If you click over here, you can see the exact CSS that they are loading every time this the browser loads your page. It's coming up. So this is all open source. They have all the code. That this is the code. This is a CSS file that loads up when you open a web page or when you write some code in your Chrome browser. Okay, so by that definition, when I am adding a CSS file over here, my custom what is happening? I am overriding the default CSS file, which is being loaded by your browser over here. Okay, so you see what happened over here? You will see these cross things over here. This means that there is a H1, the CSS property that is being overwritten somewhere else. That's the indication. This tells you that, okay, this property for H1 is being overwritten somewhere else. So this is the default style sheet. It is being overwritten over here. So if you see dashes or cross-start properties, this is an indication to tell you that there is some other CSS file that is overwriting those properties. Okay, So you see, if I remove my CSS, this comes back because this is the default one. This takes precedence. Why? Because this is the file that is actually getting loaded last, right? When you run your website, this is the one by default gets loaded. This is the one that gets loaded afterwards. So anything that I write over here is going to get over it. Okay? This is true for every browser. Safari has it, IE has it, every browser has it. Okay? So again, understand HTML is just text. These browsers are adding some default CSS to make you to kind of differentiate between these tags. Otherwise, there is actually no difference. Okay, and in a minute we'll come to it and we will try to see the real face of HTML. How do I remove this? I'll show you how do you remove this CSS. Okay. Now, what is the downside you think of having this default CSS? I mean, the good part is you don't have to worry about if I type in H1, I know it is going to give me a bigger text, some kind of a font size, some kind of a font family, and everything. What could be a downside of having this default CSS?
Maybe didn't display as expected.
Um, well, this is what I'm trying to display, so this is my expectation. This is fine. You are on the right path, but you're missing something.
You might get a style that you don't want.
You might,
Put all those like margin bars or something, and you didn't use them.
okay, that's one of the things. Okay, so here's the thing. When we are writing website, what browser are we targeting? We said all of them. Let's be a good citizen of the world and target our website for all browsers, right? No hitting on Edge or Internet Explorer. All right. So as web developers, when we are creating websites, now in this class, in this project, you will be running everything on Chrome. That's okay, right? I'm not going to come and I'm not going to ask your homework assignment to render on every single browser. But understand, as a developer, when you're working, your site, the code that you write, is going to be tested on every browser that exists right now, right? They are not going to create a website. They are not going to ask you to create a website that only runs on Chrome. They're going to say, did you test on Mozilla Firefox? Did you test on Safari? Did you test on Internet Explorer or Edge or Chrome, certain versions? Okay, so your website is going to be tested. Now, the problem is every browser is rendering a different CSS file. So the text that you see on Chrome, the font over here, the font, not necessarily the size, maybe the font family or whatever the font they're using, it might be slightly different in Safari. You will see a difference. Okay, that's a very minute difference. The bigger differences would be when you're even using more HTML tags, padding, as Stephen was saying. So the padding size would be different on Safari versus Chrome. Your images might be different. You might run into some different issues. It is quite possible. I have seen. I write some code, it works fine on Chrome. Then when I send it to testers and they open in Safari and everything breaks. It doesn't work. Okay, so and the reason is they are loading different set of files. Okay, now for the most part, these browsers have compatibility. They usually have the same sizes. They have the same font family. Usually, most of the time, but there are still differences. Okay. Now these things came from 90s when the internet was new and people were creating browsers. Right. There was a browser war going on. Right. I don't know if you guys. Well, I don't. Not most of you, but you remember that. If you go back and look at some older website, they would say best renders in IE or best renders in Netscape Navigator. Most of you don't even know what Netscape Navigator is, right? So the reason was this is what was happening. They would intentionally create websites. They would intentionally have these hidden things that would make your website render better in IE and would crash on Netscape Navigator, right? Now, I mean, now we are a little bit more civilized, so they have kind of they have shared, and now it's more settled, but that's one of the things what was happening. They would intentionally put some code, some CSS that would break if you open this website in a different browser. Okay, still happens. It's not intentional though. It's just the way the browser they have created, some of the CSS that they have added, so it kind of creates some differences between websites. Okay, so when you are writing code, eventually you will have to make sure that it renders correctly as you intended in every single browser. Yes.
What would be a good practice to make your site integration?
What would be a good practice? That's what we come to the next part. Man, you guys over there are spoiling everything. Right. So there is a concept called reset CSS. Reset CSS. I want you guys to take 5 minutes, Google what reset CSS is, and then see if you can add that CSS. It's called reset CSS, and see what the effect is. And then I load it over here and show you how it works.
What do you mean you can add it to what?
Yeah. So that's look into this, and you will understand what I mean. How do you add reset CSS? And I will show you eventually, but I want you guys to Google what reset CSS is, what is the purpose, and how can you use it basically. Yes. So,
So why it says no internet, but it says connected.
Disconnected. Sometimes the browser doesn't think of it.
all right. Did you? What do you guys think? What is reset CSS? Yes.
Just like the style, that zeroed everything out.
Okay. So it's a style sheet, and what does it do?
It's like zeroing out all of the margins, adding on and everything.
Excellent. So what's the effect of zeroing out everything? What do you think is happening?
So when you load it on different browser, it's all gonna load the same.
Ah, excellent. All right. So, um, Scott asked that what is the way? How do we kind of like get to the point where there's no CSS? Um, Obvious answer is of course you cannot remove the CSS from your browser, right? That's Chrome will load it. You cannot basically delete that file. But what reset CSS is, somebody wrote this CSS file, which is going to basically zero out or reset everything. It is going to take out all these fonts, whatever these are loading, it is going to set it to a basic font. It is going to take the text size, it is going to remove everything that the CSS, that the browser CSS is loading. Okay? Like for example, what does it do? If you Google reset CSS, it will navigate and it will take you to a file where with this code. Okay? Now, how do you include this CSS file in your program? You can copy this and then add a link over here. Oops. Add a link tag, and then in my href, I can mention this website. Okay. What is going to happen? My browser CSS loads. Okay. And then the CSS over here is going to get loaded, and then it is going to override any changes that my browser has. So if you go back over here to my website, this is what it comes up. This is the real face of HTML. You see, there is no difference between an H1 and H2, right? This is all styling, the font size and everything, that is making the difference. Now, to Scott's answer, this is the solution. A lot of the time, yes, companies would use a reset CSS to, the other issue is that you go into each browser and then you go and try to figure out how it would work over here, how it would work over here. The easy solution is you include a reset CSS, which is going to zero out the CSS in every single browser, right? And how does it do it? You can see these properties, whatever they are using, they are basically taking out all the available HTML tags. They have even included some of the HTML5, so you can see it's updated. They are removing the margin, padding, size, font size, everything. Now, what is the advantage? The thing is now I can load my CSS on top of reset CSS and then include whatever font size or whatever I think is better. So I can say style. Okay, so this is the font size, and this font size is going to be the same in every single browser. Why? Because it is going to load, it is going to reset everything in every browser, and then it is going to go into my styles and load a H1 with a font size of 50px in every single browser. Okay? Yes.
Would it be easier to do it like that? Like when you have it in the HTML, you have the type there, but do you actually upload or copy and paste the
Yes.
code into the
Okay. Yes. Excellent question. So Scott is saying, do I have to include this HTTPS? Can I download it and use it? Yes, you can. And the easier way is you can create a file here and then say call it reset.css. Of course, you can call it anything you want, but by standard practice, if it's a reset CSS, we actually say it so that people know what's going on. It's more common, and then you can simply copy this code, put it over here, okay, and then include your local CSS file, link, and then say dot set. Okay, exact same effect. Okay, I can remove my style so that you guys can see it comes up with this one. So both are options. And the good thing about this is it's an open source license. You see they have not added any license, so they are saying you can actually take it, modify, use it as however you want it. So it is publicly available. You don't have to have a copyright. You don't have to ask for permission. You can copy it, paste it, localize it, and start using it. Okay. Does that answer your question, Scott? Right. So there are two ways, and it kind of helps us to understand you can add different CSS files from the internet, or you can have a local copy and add the CSS also. Okay, for example, you came up with a super nice CSS framework and you want everybody to use it in their homeworks. You will upload this CSS file to some server or something, and then you can share this location. I would just go over here and type in your web address, and the CSS will be there. Okay. When we get to Bootstrap on Thursday, you will see this is what it is. Bootstrap has a CSS file. They have uploaded to a centralized location. All we have to do is take that link and put it over here, and we have Bootstrap CSS available to us. Go back over here. Okay, So when next time when you hear reset CSS, this is what it means. Or if you are working on a product and you come across reset CSS, this is the purpose of that CSS file. Okay? And you can see the advantage that this is now I have total and 100% control over how do I want this to look like. Okay? Yes. If you're losing that style, that default style that comes with the browser. Okay, again, you don't have to include this reset CSS. You don't have to do it in your homeworks or profiles. Some people do. People who are, if you think you're comfortable with CSS file and you want to take 100% control, then you can include the reset CSS and style. In this homework, you don't need it, but in the next one, you have a lot more control if you want. I've seen some groups and some students using reset CSS, but make sure you are comfortable with styling everything. Okay. Again, in this case, if you're using reset CSS, you are responsible for margins, paddings, borders, font size, everything. Right? Even if you add a li tag over here, and then oops, should be ul. UL tag, and then you have an li tag inside it, and then you have a list. Okay. Now, traditionally, what should happen? It should show me a bullet list, right? But since I'm using reset CSS, you can see that that bullet and everything is coming from the Chrome, the browser CSS. But if you put reset CSS, everything is the same. This is real HTML. HTML is just text, and this is how HTML actually looks like. Okay, if you want to modify HTML, the only way to do it is using CSS. And that's what the browsers are doing. So if you go back over here, you will see that these properties are being loaded and then being overwritten. So if you scroll down, you will see that these are all kind of disappearing away. Right, so let's go back to our H1. Oops. So this gets loaded, everything that is being overwritten, it gets cancelled out. Okay. So that is a concept for CSS files. Okay, so multiple CSS files, the one at the bottom takes precedence. Reset CSS basically resets all the font sizes in CSS. If you want to include something from the web, still the same thing, you put the link over here. Okay. All right, any questions? Does everybody understand the concept? Reset CSS, rolling multiple CSS files. If you want to include somebody else's CSS file, how do you do it? Same concept over here. Okay? Any questions? Yes. What is it? Yes. Yeah, yeah. If you're working in a production side, you can see the advantage because they have hired developers who know CSS, who know HTML, who know JavaScript, right? So that's why they're like, well, my again, it's more on the person who's writing the code, right? The solution, the end result should be that the site that I create should load same as in Chrome, should be the same in Safari, should be the same in Edge. How do you get to it? It's up to you. You can go to write individual code and fix it in every single browser, or you can use reset CSS and find a solution for everything. Okay. Again, the solution is based on the company what they're trying to do. Yes.
I know it's like very big, but if we were to use Bootstrap, would they like take care of some of the LI? Does that make sense? So
Yes,
if
yes.
we have a reset first and then we load theirs, that would take over.
Yes, the Bootstrap will take over. Yes, yes. Even you don't even have to have the reset before the Bootstrap because it serves the same purpose. If you put in Bootstrap later on, it is going to overtake everything. So usually, if you're using Bootstrap, you don't put reset CSS. The reason is because they are already modifying something. So reset CSS is if you are creating a CSS file that you don't want anything to use. Yeah. Yes.
So we can have a Bootstrap file and then we can use it.
Traditionally, you won't. I'll talk about Bootstrap. That what is the other solution? Usually, what companies do is Bootstrap is open source. They take the Bootstrap code and modify that code according to themselves. Yeah. Again, that is also open source. You can modify anything you want. For example, they don't like the blue color in Bootstrap because the company has a different shade of blue. So they would take the framework, modify that color, update it, and then start using it. So you don't really need reset CSS over here. Yes.
There seem to be certain, I'm not sure if they're properties or whatnot, but they're looking to be useful, but certain elements or properties just don't work in certain browsers.
Yeah.
Reset CSS has nothing to do with that, right?
No.
It still won't work in
It will still not work. Yes. So Nate, right? Nate or Nick? Nick. So what Nick is saying is, if you go to the W3 documentation, at the bottom you will see that they have a compatibility chart where they're saying this property will work on these browsers, right? And that has nothing to do with reset CSS. They're saying that this property because their browser version is probably running on a different version of HTML. They, for example, IE older version cannot support HTML5. So the properties that you are seeing are not going to load. And W3 schools or any official documentation outright tell you so that you know if you're using this property, these are the browsers that are not going to render your website. Okay. Again, those things are taken seriously under consideration when you're working on a production site because you want to make sure you want to know what your customer base is, what versions or what browser they will be using. As I said, if it's a insurance site, then there you will have an audience that are using IE. So I cannot write some code using section and headers and CSS properties that are only going to be rendered on Chrome, right? Versus if I have a more like a tech product, but I know the people, my customers are going to be on a more advanced tech, so that might be okay. Okay. All right. Any other questions before we move on? All right. Okay. So the next part has nothing to do with CSS. Well, it has. What I'm going to show you is how do you host your websites on GitHub. Okay. So the good thing about GitHub is it gives you free hosting. All right. Free hosting for websites that are written using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay. Those are the three things it supports. So if you have a website that you are going to be writing using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, which would be until project 1, you can host it on GitHub for free, and then you can share the link and your website shows up. Okay, so there are two options to that, and I'll show you. You don't have to submit, you don't have to host your homework, but going forward from homework number 2 until projects, you will have to host those websites on GitHub, share that link as well. So you will have to submit two links. You will submit your code link and then the hosted website that I'm going to show you right now. Okay, so the TAs are going to be looking at the hosted website to see the layout, if it's looking good, and then they will also check your code to see what you did to come to that point. Okay, now this is a free feature available, so everybody should be able to use this thing. Okay, you don't need anything extra. GitHub already gives you. We have to look into certain configurations, and that's what I'm going to show you. Okay. All right. So there are two ways. There are two possibilities for hosting your projects and website. The first is called personal hosting, and the second is called project. Okay. How do you do each one of them? And that's what I will show you. So we are going to go to GitHub. All right, and I'm going to create a repository first that I'm going to use the personal method to host my website. Okay, so I am in GitHub and I'm going to create a new repository. And let's use Supreme Telegram. That's a cool one. I'll use this one. Let's call it personal hosting. Oh, actually, you know what? I can't use this. Has to, let me type this out and then I will, okay, make sure I don't have any typos here. That is my username. Oops. Let me. Okay. So the first method is hosting a personal website. Okay. Um, how does GitHub host the first option? You have to create a repository which has to follow a certain name. Okay, and the name has to be your username.github.io. Okay, any repository that you create following this convention is considered a personal hosting website. Okay, it is specific, you cannot do anything else. For the first option, for the personal one, you have to create a repository, and the repository has to be your GitHub username.github.io. Okay. Ah, good question. Ah, you guys are always ahead. I was going to ask if I want to host Tom, you're going to answer that. If I have to host multiple ones, what do I have to do? Can I do it? No, no. Can I do it with my this username? I cannot, because your GitHub username is tied to this one. So with this username, you can only have one personal hosted website. If you want to create multiple ones, with this in this scenario, then you have to create a new GitHub user account and then do it. Or delete the previous ones. Yes, but that's only for the first part. I'll show you how to do projects and you can create multiple ones. But if you want to have this URL, the first option, you can only have one per username. Okay. And I'll talk about why would you do this versus the other one when I show you the second step as well. So let's go ahead and complete this. I'm going to initialize with a README, create this repository. Then I'm going to go ahead, clone it, add some code so that I can have some HTML code over here, and then we will push that. So I'm going to go back to my terminal. Let me open my new terminal. And back over here. So let's go to my desktop. I'm going to cd into my yes. Okay. I will clone this in 07, and it should be it. Okay. So I'm going to clone this over here. So git clone, and then the URL that I copied. Okay. So I should have some code over here. And then let's go ahead and open this. There's my repository. Okay. I will just add some example code from previous activities from your student portfolio, so I don't have to write code. I'm just going to copy some HTML over. Let me close this out. Okay, so in this folder, I'm going to create my index.html, and then I'm going to create my styles.css. Okay, and I'm going to copy some HTML code from previous activities. Okay, and let's see, and then I'm going to copy some CSS code from previous activities that you guys solved from week 1. Let's go ahead and run this to see if this is working, and then we will go ahead and upload it. Okay, so this is my simple website from the previous week activity. This is how it should be. Now I want to host this website so that you guys can access it. Right now it's running on my local host. Nobody can access it. Okay, so I'm going to push this code to my GitHub first. So git add. Oops, need to go inside the repository. So let's do that. Then do a git add, git commit space -m, add HTML, CSS code. Okay, and then git push. Okay, so my code should be in GitHub now. Let's go back and verify. I'm going to refresh this and see if the code comes up. Okay, there's my code and there's the stuff. If the second point, if you are hosting on GitHub, your HTML file has to be called index.html. Okay, all lowercase, no uppercase, no nothing. This is case sensitive. It has to be index lowercase.html. If you don't have an index.html, it is not going to work. Okay, I know it's restrictive, but that's the only condition, that it has to be called index.html. Okay, so now how do I host this? You will go into settings. You are going to scroll down until you get to the part where it says GitHub pages. Okay. Oh, looks like I already had one. So on this page, you will see an option, or it is going to say select a branch to host from. Okay. When you click that Dropbox, you will see master branch. Select that. Okay. Once you have done that, and that's all. You don't have to press save. You don't have to press anything. It automatically saves it. Um, how do you know it has been hosted? It will give you the link. Now, anybody in this class can go to this link and they should be able to see my page. Let's open this. And here it is. Okay, so if you go to sdanielk.github.io, you should be able to see exact same thing that I'm seeing, right? So this has been hosted. The only thing is I can only have one of this URL, right? Because it's tied to my username. So this is called like the personal level. Now, when do people use this? Usually what I've seen is if you're trying to update a portfolio, if you create a portfolio of for your LinkedIn or something that you want to show your employers, you would have this so it is easier to remember. All that you give them is your username, github.io, and this shows up. Okay, that's one way. But the downside is you can only have one of these. This URL, only one of them. Okay, in case if this is not working, sometime it takes a while to, it has cached, or sometimes GitHub takes a while to update. Just make sure you add slash index.html and it should still work. Sometimes, usually it should work without the index HTML. If it is not working and you have verified that you have deployed it correctly, try to add a slash index.html and see if that works. Sometimes GitHub just takes a while to update it, but eventually this is the URL that should be working and you can share it and it works for everybody. Yes. That would be the name of the URL. The homework one I'm going to show you. You need to use the second way that I'm going to show you for homework. This is the first way that I'm showing you. Usually, I'm saying that when you get to a point where you have a nice portfolio and everything, this is one way you can use it. So when you share it, this is the link that you're sharing. It's tied to your GitHub and your user account. So employers like to see some of your GitHub projects. So it kind of gives you that idea. That's one way. And this is called personal. Why is it called personal? You can only have one of this, right? Because it's tied to your username. The second option is project, and that's what you will be using in your homeworks. Okay. Again, this is not feasible. I want to host multiple websites. I want to host multiple repositories. This method is not going to work, right? This is why they have a second option called project. For each project, you can host that as well. Okay. So in this case, we are going to go back and do the same thing again. We will create a new repository. This time you can have any name you want. Okay. Remember, for the personal one, it has to be your username.github.io. In this case, you can have anything you want. So I'm going to use this one, Super Disco. All right. And I'm going to initialize with README. I'm going to create a repository. And we'll follow the same step until I get some code over here. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and clone this. Okay, and going to come back over here. I'm going to cd out of it, do a git clone this one. This time I will make sure to go inside it. It was called Super Disco. Okay, I have my README file. Let me bring it on the top. Okay, I will add same code. Let's do the same thing. I'll create a, again, remember it has to be index.html, lowercase, otherwise it's not going to work. So this is not going to work. Let's go back and fix this. Okay, and add a CSS file, styles.css. This can be anything you want. The only thing GitHub is looking for is index.html to load the first time. So this time I'm going to copy the same code over. We'll change a bit so that we can be sure that we have two different websites loading. Let me press this. This is my HTML file. Let's go ahead and format it. And let's change student bio. Let's call it project. Okay. Let's run this. Make sure this is working. And then we'll go ahead and upload this. Okay, so this is going to be my project. Okay, this is how you would do your homework. You are going to create a repo, whatever name you want to give it. Now, how do you deploy it? Let's go ahead and push this first. So git add, git commit -m, add HTML, CSS code, and git push. Okay, so let's go back to our repository, which is this one. Let's refresh, make sure this is good. All right, so I have my index.html and I have my style.css. Okay, now you want to host this. Same thing, you will go into your settings, scroll down to your GitHub pages. Okay, this is what you will see. You're going to select this and select master branch. Okay, at some point we'll talk about what master branch and what does it mean. Basically, this is saying that this is where your code is. Okay, you're going to select master branch, and then you don't have to press anything, save or anything. It automatically saves it. If it is successful, it will give you the web page. Okay, so you see how what does it say? It still has github.io. After that, it has the project name. Okay, how many can I have that? As many repositories I have, right? If I have a different repository with a different name, for example, your homework 2, then this will say username, github.io, and then homework 2, homework 3, homework 4, or whatever convention that you're following. Yes.
So did it like just from the name of the repository, whether it was personal or project?
Yes, it is. It is going by the name of the repository. Yes. And how does it know the name of the repository? Because you are actually clicking into the repository and then going into the settings. So you are actually inside the repository settings. Okay. Hold on. Let me make sure this is working before. Let's open this new tab. My student bio project. So if I submit this, you can go to this one, super type Disco, and you will see this page. Okay, so this is one of the links that you're going to submit for your homeworks, other than the code. Good practice if you want to do it for this homework, but you don't have to. Okay, you don't have to deploy it anywhere. The only thing you have to submit is the GitHub link. Yes, Nate.
So when you're hosting on GitHub, can you have multiple HTMLs?
You can have HTML, multiple HTMLs, everything will work. Yes, you need to have one that is indexed. And why is it? Because the page that this loads, you see it's not mentioning index.html. It is going to assume the file called index.html is there. If it is not there, it's not going to load. Again, it's for free. They can put anything they want. They said it has to be indexed. It's okay, right? Again, remember this will work for your HTML, JavaScript, CSS code, even jQuery, right? So until project 1, you will be working, you will be hosting your websites over here, right? After project 1, it doesn't work for some of the backend code, so that's why we have a different hosting website. We'll take a look at it. But for now, for the remaining 7-8 weeks, this is what you will be working on. Free hosting, you can share this to anybody, and they will be able to see your websites. Okay. I know people do homeworks and they like to share with everybody in the class. Usually, I'll see Slack messages saying, "Hey, this is the homework," and everybody will be able to see it. Okay. So two ways. All right. Any questions? Okay. So what I want you guys to do is make sure you are able to do this in the next half an hour, both things. Looks easy when I do it. I want you guys to make sure everybody is able to host a website because you have to do it in your second homework. Okay? So create a personal one. Make sure you are able to do that. This is even more important because all your homeworks are going to be submitted using the second method. Okay? Create a repo. You can add any HTML page you want. Doesn't matter. It has to be deployed though. Yes, CJ, you have a question? No? Go ahead. What? You had what? You did the project. Okay. You want to? Oh, okay, okay, yeah. But make sure you put it HTML. That's right. Right now, for homework, it's okay, right? But I want you to create a library, so that HTML file on that, so that it goes a page with some HTML and CSS. Some you can copy anything you want, but it should show up something. Yeah. Yes, and then you can do it. Lower this. So does your username has a different code? The username has a different code.
If it does have duplicates,
To be honest, I don't think it matters because when you type in a URL over here, the case doesn't matter.
okay.
Give it a try and see. Usually people make it lowercase, but create it and see. I think it shouldn't matter because yeah. Uh, yeah, so you will have a repo for student your mind. That's one way. Inside. Yes. Yeah, at this point, yes. Um, right. But the thing is, it's going to evolve because you are eventually when you get this time, you will have a React objects, and those things are not given as an OS. So if you have heard about the so that's what we're doing. The simple ones, project, the homeworks are still going to be on this side. While the simple ones, the React ones. Yeah. Oh, no, no, then you have to do So if you want the README, this is activity number 5 and 6 on your GitLab. Those are the two activities that we are working on right now. Activities number 5 and 6.
Yeah. So it's going. So we're gonna, if we didn't have anything, it would go up, down. So the first one is inline, and then it's, so it's I think it's just reading, like for this part, it's reading right to left. It's usually what the ground. Yeah. So just, yeah,
Yeah, try the CSS so that you know it works. Yeah.
Um, I mean, if you wanted to go underneath and cover it, yeah. Yeah, you're stacking the line, but obviously I wouldn't do that. Yeah, yeah, if it's not working, I was like, oh, yeah, no, so it's, wait, so this has float in your book. This one? Oh, this is the that. Um, You've been making this standard for somebody for a while now, but people are really starting to look at what it's about spot. Oh, so floated, and then it floated, and then it cleared the float, and then it floated. Laid out. Okay, it's good. A lot of stuff is going on. CSL, bootstrap, a lot of this CSS libraries that bootstrap, applications set up for only and this is what back to things like that in the and be a real so yeah, it tends for it's treating that white spots as element and so it's ignoring the flow and then just flowing next to it. If you take out this flowing, yeah, this time.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, no, that is, I have to research properties. More just like knowledge about the that's not simple. That is not simple. Um, will use yeah.
You got a question or just stretching?
That was honestly one of the. Well, right. Yeah. That's what I've never really.
Okay, but at least you're understanding my
Yes, I understand your thought process. Yeah, look like.
Not to the repository of anyone, but to the repository that copies the files. Like it's just, yeah. See how it's adding I did put.
This, it doesn't make sense. Specify so we're looking to get rid of the side. No floating items allowed the line just for the right side. So yeah, better ways to do that. Yeah.
Brackets just
Right,
means
yeah,
optional.
here is applied to
It's an optional part.
after the flow, not the that is flowing. So that's not allowing anybody.
The name is the name of the remote.
This is the element that's flowing in relation to that. So that here would flow from this, so now it's moving down one. That's the part of the challenge. Yeah, it's under that.
That's the problem. Dropping it.
The more you start doing the more
You got it to where I wanted, but then now it's dropping. But it makes sense though.
Okay.
Yeah, this is so fast.
Yeah.
I noticed that like there was a lot of stuff that was instead of like I was like all the same thing, you just like put them out and put them on the same thing. And I did. I like changed all the class names so they're staying the same. So essentially it's doing the same thing. Is there like a preferred way to try to say
So it depends. So this is more of a stylistic thing. So the way I usually approach things is by default I use a flat line when I want to try when I want to like create style and animate a real but then I want to
Yes.
have like control. So I want to like just pushing like I want to make like every button pushing those general selectors to get getting that's kind of my role.
Okay. So for some reason your SSH key or something is not set up correctly, but that's okay. So just copy this. Okay, the first line, what they're saying, and then put in your email address that you are using for GitHub, and then try again. It should fix it.
Git?
Yeah, exactly the same. Git config minus minus global user.email. In double quotes, this is where you put your email that you're using over here. Press enter. Yeah, put it over here. Enter and then try again.
Git push?
Yeah, then try git push. Yes.
Yeah, now you see the push in the middle of it. So it's just yeah.
And then what's the one that generated is it a project?
It's as opposed to it's github.com slash io slash repository. It's like GitHub dot your extent. Yeah, username GitHub. Yeah, it's short. Right. It's shorter than that.
Project. First, that's the first thing. Using repositories that are username.
Yep, that is literally the only
No, it's not. You have to create it
shorter, easier to remember.
You might have to wait like 10, 15 minutes for it. Yeah, so it doesn't, yeah, the word doesn't mix. Yeah, username, dot GitHub. You have to create a repository, then put in the code and then
So, you don't have to
so the index has to be on the root. So it cannot be inside the user.
yeah.
Open this individually.
This thing broke after I did that.
You don't get add get
Break up the game. This part is that's like one of yeah, you don't delete the repo, you delete the contents. Go back and make it private. Maybe I think everything is good.
Yeah. It's just an option. Like this, they're trying to create CSS because again, think from the CSS image, anything.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay. That's what
So,
but yeah,
yeah, alright, that's fine.
you've got to make a difference.
Yeah, there is
All right. Quick check. We have 5 minutes. I'm not going to introduce anything new. We'll start. We'll talk about a little bit more CSS and then look into Bootstrap on Thursday. But make sure these tools are working, especially the project one. You're able to deploy. It's working. If you are good, um, that's the end of the class. If you want any homework help, homework question, we'll be here until 10. Okay. I'll see you guys on Thursday then.